we're going to be talking about building your business into a wealth generating assets. And we're going to talk about the things we have to get right together in the time that we work together. The reason we do the asset of value revision with each other, despite the fact that we're all working together through Aurik, is because it's important to remember again and again and again and again and again and again why we do what we do. The work we do with each other is the sum of the parts. The final outcome is an asset of value. So keeping the end in mind is enormously valuable from that perspective. And I'm going to start immediately with a quick question, and I'm going to open up my chat. I'm really keen to see where everybody's at, what your thinking is. Has your thinking changed around why you do what you do? Where do you all want to be 36 months, 60 months from now? 36 months to 60 months from now, where do you want to be? Fulesh, I know exactly where you want to be.
Yes.
Very, very clear, very, very clear. When I first met Fulesh, he turned around and he said, I, in 5 years, want to be in the United States of America. We ran some calculations on purchasing a home in the US. We ran calculations on the settlement costs in the US. We ran calculations in acquiring a reasonable franchise in the US as a means to get into the United States economy. We ran calculations on his kids' education and support. And then we did a valuation on the business today. We looked at the gap, and that's the goal. Crisp, clear, that's what we're moving to. And all of us have different goals. Some of us want to have lekker babies here. Some of us want to go and live in some strange country, which, thank heavens, now has got a decent president, as opposed to a nefarious, divisive president. So Fulesh, maybe your timing is good. Some of us want to build a business that completely dominates in South Africa or across Africa. And very few of us want to build a business, get the hell out of it, and go and get a job in corporate. Or am I wrong?
Right.
I'm right on that. Okay, so think carefully about what it is you want. I find it personally, myself, very hard to work towards anything if that anything is not clear for me. From an Aurik point of view, I want to be in a position 10 years from now where we have a settled client base in the United Kingdom, in the US, in Canada, in Australia, in Europe, in Singapore, and in India. And all our clients, through the round tables that I've done with Fulesh, that I've done with Larry, we build out that service. And I get Keith to engage with someone in Timbuktu. Timbuktu's in Africa, isn't it? Okay, it's not a clear focus for us at this point, Keith. So let's say Toronto. And across the pond, we get business owners all building assets of value with an asset of value mindset to seek, find, and secure engagements with each other. That's the direction we certainly are going. So our goals are crystal clear. It's important to have a clear goal. And know this, the goal changes without a doubt, but you need to start with something. You need to start with something. Well, obviously, what we believe from an Aurik point of view is that there is only one end goal, and that should be to build your business into an asset of value. And I want to talk very briefly about an asset. For those of you who have not heard this before, Clifford, you'll be very familiar with this, that I do know. But an asset, think of an asset like one would an investment on the stock exchange. Brian, if you take 100 Rand and you buy a share on the stock exchange, you hope that the share at 100 Rand will, over a period of time, let's say 5 years down the line, grow to 300 Rand or 400 Rand. The difference between the 400 Rand and the 100 Rand is the capital gain. In our businesses, we quantify that as the value of the equity and shareholding in the business itself. So we all want capital growth. The second thing we want is if we buy that share, we want that share to yield dividends to us on an annual basis. 15 Rand a year, 20 Rand a year, whatever the case might be. That's income growth. And the way we experience it as business owners is obviously because we pay ourselves, it's in our salaries, and also we then do it through dividends. And we want to see growth both in capital and growth in income. But how do you realize the 300 Rand capital gain when you sell that share? If you can't sell it, you can't get it. And 94.6% of businesses started globally fail to sell. Last week, I got access to a 109-page research report commissioned by the Australian government on SMEs across Australia. In Australia, the number sitting at 97.2% of established businesses 20, 30 years into the game failed to sell. They called them late harvest grapes. My understanding of grapes is that if you leave a grape on the vine too long, it starts to almost turn into a raisin. It becomes super sweet. And unless you pick it, it eventually perishes and dies. They've recognized that as a massive issue in the Australian economy. And yet these are stats that I got out of the United States when I was living there for a period of time. They remain absolutely valid today. So starting with the inner mind is critical. That asset of value is vital. The way we do it from an Aurik perspective, obviously, is you need to have a business that's built on a brand. I can't have the name Fulesh in it. I can't have the name Tammy in it. It needs to be the name of the business, and the name of the business needs to own and govern the relationship with your clients, your suppliers, and your team. It then needs to, once you've understood what makes you special in the eyes of your customers, be delivered through a system of delivery. And I'm going to talk to all these points. And systems themselves are dead. They're inert. It's like argon, a gas that has nothingness to it. It's a dead gas. Am I right, Stu? I can see you nodding. I am right here. See, I remember a little bit from chemistry and physics. The thing that brings it to life are your team members. And we'll talk about the challenges of people in the business. And these three things together, once built and interlinked and tied together, release time for you to focus on what you ought to be doing, and that's growing. I am yet to see someone excited about buying a business that isn't preceded by growth. My career started by me buying two businesses at $1 a piece. They were old businesses. The one was 42 years old. The other one was around 33, 34 years old. They'd certainly earned their owners good incomes, but effectively I took it over for R1 and I took over the debt. There was no growth for 5, 6 years prior to me acquiring it. An asset of value is why we are working together. An asset of value is what unites us around the end game. I want to share an analogy with you. I promised the analogy, a fresh analogy, a different analogy. This individual, does he look happy to you? He's got that kind of cherubic smile. If he wasn't fishing, he would be almost an immature angel. That's what it looks like. He looks delighted and happy. And so he should be, because he earns $10 million a year. Now, to give you a sense, a really good life in the United States is earned on $77,000 a year. He earns $10 million a year. And he does so by fishing. His name is Kevin Van Dam. And he was, over the period that I worked with him, the world's top bass sport fisherman globally. World champion, consistently. And I learned some interesting things from him. When I first met him, I met him at a show, at one of these big exhibition shows. And we had a really good conversation, and we decided to work with each other. This was now in 2011, 2012, 2013. And when I said to him, Kevin, how is it that you consistently earn $10 million a year? He said, Pavlo, I do so by consistently winning every competition that I participate in. And I said, how do you do it? When you're fishing against other individuals who are equally skilled, equally driven, equally ambitious, given that there are 39 million registered freshwater bass fishermen in the United States, how do you consistently win? And he said, I'll tell you how. So the first thing he said is, I specialize in bass only. The only fish that I ever fish for is bass. And as a species, there are two types. This is a largemouth bass, and you have a smallmouth bass. He then went on and said, within the species, I focus only on largemouth bass. And I said, why? And he said to me, these fish have a very particular psychology. As a species, they're aggressive. They're extremely territorial. I understand the environments that they live in, what's called the structure under the water. I know when and how they respond to different conditions in the water. I've understood their relationship to the color of the water, which means I've understood what the color of the water does to the fish. I know how the color of the water is affected by the weather, by the wind, by the rain, by the clouds, by the sun, by their altitude, by the time in the year. I mean, this guy's an obsessive compulsive understander of the bass fish. He said, the second thing I do is I make big investments to win all the time. And his investments included a boat. He showed me the boat, because what happens is you go to a freshwater lake, they blow a whistle or fire a gun in the United States, probably a automated assault rifle. And as they let off 17,000 rounds per minute into the air, all the bass fishermen accelerate their boats and go to their preferred spot. And the rules say you cannot fish within 50 meters circumference of any other boat. And when he showed me his engine, he showed me the nitro something, something, something on the engine. And I said, why have you got that? And he said, Pavlo, nobody else does. When that gun goes, I'm the first to the spot where I know I have the highest chances of winning. The second thing he did is he said, climb onto the boat. And he said, stand in the middle of the boat away from the decks. He pressed a button on the console, and coming out of the decks were 4 fishing tackle boxes. He said, Pavlo, I carry 3,000 lures into every competition that I fish in. Now, a lure, that plastic object over there, is made to behave in a certain way in the water. It either looks like a threat, or it looks like food, or it looks like an intruder, or it might look like a prospective date. But these lures are designed to agitate, antagonize, encourage the fish to attack them or engage with them. And lures all have hooks, and that's how you hook the fish. And he says, my competitors take between 300 to 600 lures. Now, the lures have got different shapes, different colors, different sizes, different structures. So they all behave differently in the water. And he says, I need to be sure that I have the best, most ideal lure, given the circumstances of the day, in terms of wind, water, weather, etc. And then he said, look at this. And he showed me his rod rack. The rod rack on the boat is where you store the fishing rods. He says, my competitors take an average between 6 and 9 rods. He takes between 12 and 16 rods. And the reason that matters is because the length of the rod, the flexibility in the rod, the shape of the rod has an impact of how you use the rod to make the lure behave in the water itself. And he says, I play the percentages in my favor. I go in with more firepower each and every time. And then I said to him, what do you do out of season? He says, look, the season runs for between 5 to 6 months. For the remainder of the time, let me show you what I bought. And he had gone and bought this massive RV. Is everyone familiar with RVs? It's a recreational vehicle. Tanya, effectively what it is, it's like a massive caravan on wheels. And most Americans have never traveled out of America. What they do is coquetzo, they get their kids and their wives and husbands and family. It's like a small hotel on wheels, and they drive across the United States, touring internally in the United States. And he said, come onto my RV, let me show you something. And he took me to one of 17 cupboards. He opened up the cupboard, and there was a cold water diving suit. And then he took me to another cupboard that he pulled out, a set of drawers, and he showed me countless maps. And he said, what I do is I take my poor wife, and in the winter season, we drive to all the main lakes. I dive the lakes in my cold water diving suit. And on these maps, I mark the structure of rocks, reeds, trees, logs in the lakes, and I get a sense of where the best spot is in each and every lake. And he said, Pavlo, my maps are better than anything the American military has of our own lakes in our own country. He starts with the end in mind every day. And every day, he says, how do I play the percentages of winning in my favor? I want you to hold on to this analogy. So let's talk about brand positioning. The very, very first element, the first layer that we've got to get right in building a business into an asset of value. What does it mean? So brand's not advertising and it's not a logo. What does it mean? What does a brand mean? Because when I look around in South Africa, there are 1.3 million .co.za websites. I don't know how many .coms are present in the country. There's a whole new flux of .co and .io websites coming into the country. And for all of us, our website is the window to the world of customers we want to serve. In the instance where you have a physical store, your physical store is restricted by the behavior of your location, increasingly the behavior of the landlord. And in a physical store, you have limits. You have to stretch beyond your physical location to bring customers to you. What we've learned is this. But before I ask you, hang on a sec, let me just ask. I want to run a very, very quick poll, just a quick poll. In the same way that when you go fishing for a species of fish, you use a particular lure. So for example, this here would be used to catch a mullet, whereas this here, that would be used to catch a barbel. That would be used to catch, that would be a useful lure to catch a saltwater fish. These spinners over here could be used to catch, in some cases, bass, but probably schools, fish that exist in schools. When you're fishing for a marlin, you use a fundamentally different lure to when you're fishing for, who's a papgoeie over here? Who knows papgoeie? Oh my word, Pippa, are you a papgoeie? A papgoeie is where you cruelly go and you catch koi fish in muddy lakes in Johannesburg. There are mud suckers and they vacuum up all the debris and rubbish at the bottom of a lake. And you see all these big burly fellows parked with their caravans and their braai. And on a portable TV, they're watching the rugby. And they've got 3 or 4 rods in the water with a big piece of pup that's flavored with garlic or pepper or ginger or God knows what else. The type of fish you fish for, the species of fish you fish for, is the kind of lure or bait that you use. So my question to you is, what makes you special? Put it on the chat. I'm interested in hearing. Tanya, in the eyes of your customer, what makes you special?
You answer. Yeah, we're in the wine industry and offer service to the farms mainly. But what differentiates us is that firstly, the experience we've had in wine in different directions, and also the fact that we offer a slightly different product to our competitors.
Got it. Got it. So experience and product. Experience and product and service.
Yeah, so basically we offer turnkey solution to the service side of the wine industry.
Got it. Got it. Yanni, what makes you special in the eyes of your customers? Nothing? Nothing that's clear yet? Keith, what makes you special in the eyes of your customers?
Haven't worked that one out yet. That's why I'm on the program. But
we are going to work it out so smartly. You have no. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about what we were taught. What we were taught in business first began more or less officially in 1771. And this chap, Ralph Waldo Emerson, turned around and said, if you build a better mousetrap, you will beat a path. The world will beat a path to your door. He said, if you have a great product, so the features of your product, the features of your service, features, buy from me, Daniel, because I have got this gizmo and I've got that and I've got this and I've got that and I've got this. He said, if you have a great product, the world will beat a path to your door. And in 1771, he was absolutely right, because in 1771, there were no products. There was whiskey. There was a Colt Magnum revolver. There was a horse. There were saddles. There were boots. There were cowboy hats. And there were some very, very fancy clothes. But really, there wasn't much out there. And he was right. A better product won the day. Then what happened in 1922? This chap turned around and said, no, there are too many products out there. It has to be on price. And his name, Henry Ford, was quoted as saying, you can have any Model T Ford you want for so long as it is black, Sue, exactly. And he built the assembly production line. And he did so to bring down the cost of cars to compete with the cost of horses. He was a big price advocate. So it's not about product, it's about price. And from 1922 all the way through to the early 60s, price dominated. Until this fellow came along and said, but everyone now has got a good product. Everyone now has got a good price. What sets you apart is your marketing. Who you market to, Philip Kotler said, is important. You need to define who you are in business to serve. Now, all of us are SMEs, according to the banks and according to the mobile networks and according to our main insurers. We're all SMEs. We all sit between $1 and $30 million a year of revenue, $50 million a year of revenue. And how many of you are really thrilled by the service you get from your bank? Thrilled. I don't even know who our bankers are. We've been banking with Standard Bank now for 30 years. We have, I think, 13 or 14 different business accounts with them, and our bank representative changes every 12 to 18 months. Every time they make contact with us, they have no idea what business we're in. And then when they do come see us, they never come see us again, because I keep on asking them, other than an evil necessity, what do you do for me? You don't know what I do. You don't know what business we're in. Every time we ask for something, I've got to keep on filling in my name. After 30 years, surely you should know Pavlo. It's not that hard, is it? Well, mind you, it is. So Kotler turned around and said, it's the segments that matter. And we hear it. I sell into corporates, blue chip corporates. Koketso, how many times have you heard that? My clients are blue chip corporates. That's a segment. My clients are SMEs. My clients are A-income consumers. Philip Kotler introduced that idea, and it gave birth to the advertising industry, which was in fledgling states in the early 60s. Today, in business schools, right around the world, these are the three propositions that are taught today in business schools. For the last 5 to 6 years, we have seen none of these win. What we see consistently win is a business that interprets what makes it special as a business that solves problems. Who of you has spent money this year on anything that doesn't aim to solve a problem for you? And last year, and the year before, and the year before, and the year before, and the year before into time immemorial. It's part of the human condition. Businesses don't spend money on things that don't solve a problem. We don't spend money on things that don't solve a problem. There is no such thing as a luxury anywhere in the world. It's a sloppy term, and it's a term that's used to make excuses for a poor understanding of who your customer is. Who here would take a headache tablet if you did not have a headache? Well, maybe I shouldn't ask that question, because there's some people who I believe, and I've read in books, crush it up and put it into all sorts of other mixtures. But most of us, I'm hoping over here, wouldn't take a headache tablet for no reason. If you don't know what problem you solve for your client or customer, be it a consumer or a business, you do not have a clear enough definition of who your customer is. It's like saying, I'm a competitive fisherman. Sue, sorry about that. Is it fisher person or fisher woman, fisherman? Should we just go with angler? Let's go with angler. Okay, that's more or less moderate. I'm a competitive angler. And I say, really, that's interesting, Tammy. What do you compete with? Oh, trout, bass, sailfish, kingfish, you name it. I compete for any fish out there. And then you come across a Kevin Van Dam who is so narrowly focused in terms of what problem he solves that you find yourself constantly on the back foot when he's on the front foot when it comes to bass. So understanding what problem you solve for your clients and being able to quantify the cost of that problem not being solved is essential in knowing who you serve. But then again, that's not enough. In the last 3 years, what we have seen win consistently is not only a business with a good product at the right price, with an understanding of who they serve in terms of the problem they solve, but at the same time, who would want a headache solved like that? Who the sadomasochist here? Hands up, let's see. Papa, you put up your hand, I saw you. Oh, Clifford, you put up your hand. I know a very good doctor for the two of you. If the experience you offer your clients and customers is a bad experience, despite the fact that you solve problems for them. They're not going to want to stick around with you. They're not wanting to engage with you. An experience is created by firstly understanding who do you serve, what problem do you solve, and then understanding how do they want to learn about you, how when they learn about you, do they want to become clients and customers with you, and then once they're clients and customers, how do they want that problem solved in a way that's pleasing, delightful, and supports word of mouth, onward promotion. Your brand is a perception of your customers in terms of what problem you solve for them and what experience you offer for them. And to the extent that you don't clarify with certainty and narrowness who it is you solve, who is your customer, you can't define the problem you solve. And to the extent that you can't define the problem you solve, you can't create the right experience for them to learn about you, come across to you, and be serviced by you. The world is simply too competitive to not narrow in and narrow down on this basis. I want to share a story of a client of ours in the US. It's an attorney practice, a law firm. And in the beginning, they were typical law firms. They were providing contracts and support for both consumers and businesses across every aspect of law. They would do rental contracts, they would do some family law, they would do marriage contracts, they would do non-disclosure agreements and shareholders agreements. It was a typical law firm with really good, capable and able, qualified lawyers behind it who saw that they could do anything for everyone and anyone when it comes to establishing legal contracting. And the problem with most of us on the screen is we are able and capable people. The problem with most of us on the screen is that we are optimists and we can see problems to almost every solution. And within our sectors and industries, we can see even with more clarity. So the propensity to say, no, I'm not solving that problem for you, for a client that doesn't fit neatly with how you want to define your brand, is low. We mostly just say yes. They were no different. And they said what makes us special, Pavlo, is that we rely on relationships because that's what governs the professional services sector. We went through a process with them. They agreed to come on board. And what they do today is they narrowly only focus on providing one product at the right price to two segments of clients to solve the problem of divorce. They learned as they deepened in this area that divorce mostly takes place 7 years on into a marriage and 25 to 30 years on into a marriage with a midlife crisis, when effectively kids leave the home and there's a whole lot of apprehension around that. I now need to have my life back. What they then did is they got access to data, specifically the marriage records. And they started to track 7 years in and 25 to 30 years in. And they created media that spoke to the mindset of the 7-year itch and the 25 to 30-year itch. They produced that media and sent it through the appropriate channels, some print, some digital. And they created a system of marketing where if divorce was in the front of your mind, you would find messaging that resonated with you, that felt like it understood you, that felt like it had read your mind, and you would engage with that service provider. They, in effect, created an automated marketing system to generate leads for themselves. That business, over the period that we worked with them, was growing at almost 40% compound annually. That's doubling the size every 27 months. Understanding who you serve, what problem you solve for them, and what experience they need is the essence of establishing an asset of value. Once we've gotten that right, we now need to make it happen. And the way that we need to make it happen is through what we refer to as a system of delivery. Your business systems, it's not technology. Your business systems are the functions in a business. Every business has to market. You've got to tell the world that you exist. You've got to find your clients and customers. You've got to tell them that you understand them, you understand what problem they have, and you've got to tell them that you can solve it. This is why quantifying the problem is so important. If you can quantify the problem, it means that your service, your solution, your answer can come in below the cost of the problem. That's the definition of value. Once you generate the leads, you then have to create a process of engaging the leads and converting them. It's called sales. Someone knocks on my door, they inquire about what we offer. We now need to take them through a journey to show them that we can solve their problem. And once they're on board, we need a system to fulfill and deliver our obligations, whether it be the provision of stock, the provision of a service. The way that we organize fulfillment is essential in creating a great experience. The way that we buy and the way we engage our suppliers is a system of business too. The way that we work with our teams is a system of business. The way that we manage our money and costings is a system of business too. It works across all the commercial functions, and they need to be organized to articulate your positioning. Tammy, I know who I serve in clear terms. I know what problem I solve for them, and I know what experience they need. Means that my marketing system needs to find them and reach them and let them know that I can help. It means my sales system, once they engage with me, confirms their experience of my marketing. And it means my fulfillment system, operations and administration, manifests their expectations and brings it to life. And a system has 6 elements to it. Activities in a sequence that can be measured. Importantly, that can be taught and supported with a job description. And importantly, can be remunerated for performance on the system. In marketing, in sales, in ops, in people, in money, there are about 186 systems to create an articulated system of delivery. There's the cog of marketing. There's the cog of sales. There's the cog of operations and fulfillment. Each of them has to be optimized. And then each of them needs to be coordinated to work well with each other. Because when the systems are working well, this is what creates propulsion in the business. It moves the business forward. Positioning first, brought to life and articulated by systems. Yeah? No. No. Brought to life by people. You know the story of the baker? I go back to it because it is so clear and obvious. For those of you who don't, 54, 55-year-old man comes to see us 14 years ago, started the business at the age of 30, was doing around 60-odd million rands a year. 14 years ago, that's a big business. It's a sizable business. It's a great business. He wanted out, but he couldn't sell. 94.6% of businesses started failed to sell. Frustrated beyond measure. Very quickly, we understood that he was marketing into the hospitality sector. He was engaging with only one individual, the person perceivably responsible for buying, called the food and beverage manager, who wanted to be sure that their continental breakfasts would be of good quality for the hotel. Once we had been through the marketing system and sales system with him, he very quickly realized that although the segment was the hotel group, the experience of selling, engagement, and delivery needed to work not only across food and beverage managers, but the finance manager, the HR manager, and the procurement manager. He built a system to market independently and individually to all four of those individual managers in the hotel group. And in effect, the impact was that it socialized the name of his business in the buying committee responsible for procuring the continental breakfasts in a corporately enabled hospitality group. It was this single switch that took a man who had been working in his business for 30 years, from 60 odd million rands a year, to, at the end of 2018, over 1 billion rands of revenue annually. He got his positioning right. He built a marketing system and a sales system to articulate that positioning. It was the single switch. How do you bring it to life? Because systems are dead by themselves. Systems are dead by themselves. A system is like a fantastic recipe. You know exactly what you want to bake and for who. But the recipe, if it's just left there on paper, nothing happens. And this is where we need team. From an asset of value point of view, we define it as the right people doing the right thing at the right time, all the time. It's the single biggest challenge we all face in a business. People are, unfortunately, human. They have stuff, they have issues, they have emotions, sadly. They're the single source of instability in the business, including ourselves. We're human. The way to get this right, the way to orchestrate your team, no different to that of a conductor in an orchestra, is to establish the sheet music first. The sheet music is represented in a business by the systems we have built for marketing, for sales, for ops, and for admin, and for procurement. And that melody that you create will be a disaster if you place the violinist onto percussion and you take the expert at the triangle, and I'm sure they have an official name, and you put them on the trumpet. The way that we employ in an asset of value is we don't employ through jobs. We employ system operators. Because if you know what your positioning is, you know what your system of delivery is in order to achieve that positioning, in finding the right person to do the right thing at the right time. It means that when I employ Dario, I don't look at his CV, which is 17 pages long, with bullet points that would make me think he has built the base station for Mars alone. He is so brilliant on paper. Instead, I look at the activities of the system I want him to operate, and I ask him questions on the activities to see whether he can do it or has done it previously. When Dario comes to get a job with me, he looks at the activities he would need to perform, and he himself can independently measure whether he can do it or not. It removes that massive gap between the employer and the employee. which in the first instance of employment is always a mystery. What we have found is that when you find the right people to do the right thing at the right time, and if Dario is ideally suited to the sales system, he takes to it because it is him and it plays to his strength. And when he implements it, he starts to perform. And as he performs and yields success, it builds his confidence. And as his confidence builds, it creates meaning in his work. And if we get the systems to integrate with each other, he understands his relationship in sales to that of Koketso's in marketing, to that of Larry's in operation. And that's how you build a team of people who do the right thing at the right time all the time to drive the systems that articulate the positioning of your business, the thing that makes your business special in the eyes of your customer. I'm cognizant of time, so I'm going to skip this particular case study. Time, the most valuable thing for all of us. And I leave you with this question. Well, I'm not leaving you with this question, but I'm asking this question. What is your job as a business owner? What is your job as a business owner, and how should you be spending your time? And seldom do we actually sit down and think about this, because there is only one job that you have as a business owner, and that is to build the system that makes the business happen. It's not you making the business happen. To build the system that makes the business happen. 3 parts to it: positioning, system of delivery, a purposeful team. We are all builders, and we're constantly building. I'm going to share with you the formula to manufacture time. And I'm going to repeat myself, Clifford, because you've seen this before. And I promise you, we can see this again and again and again. In fact, all of us ought to take a copy of the slide on how you manufacture time and put it up on our toilet doors. At seated height, incidentally. The first thing, you need to position first. If you don't know who you serve, if you don't know what problem you solve for them, and you don't know what experience they need in order to support your business, where do you even begin? It's the single biggest challenge in every and any business. We all come from a place where we say yes to everything, because all of us started businesses completely undercapitalized, and chasing cash flow was the most essential thing we could do. Once that positioning is understood, create the system of delivery. Be patient. It's the sum of the parts. With you, we are creating 4 systems over a 24-month period. The activities we share with you, if you do not implement them, won't ever translate into systems. You need your 10, 15, 20 SIPOCs in marketing, in sales, in ops, in admin, in procurement, in people. And then get the right people to do the right thing at the right time. Brian, we'll get this presentation out to you. We'll get the presentation out to you. It's good to take notes, but we'll get the presentation out to you for sure. Let's talk about exits, just very briefly. Here are the stats, global stats. I'm now realizing that 94.6% is no longer accurate. I was shocked at the Australian stat, shocked. 97.2% in Australia. It's a growing economy, it's a strong economy, it's a well-heeled economy, it's a well-organized economy. That's an economy with a very, very, very friendly business, government towards business, unlike ours. 97.2%. In any event, globally, 94.6% failed to sell. In family succession, Wilson's, I'm talking to both of you, 27.3% successful succession from founder generation to next generation. We shouldn't take things for granted. This is how it works. So I've been, Aurik has been in the fortunate position to have done about 100 transactions, 100 exits on behalf of our early stage businesses, but also some clients. And I'm now going to talk to you with a buyer's hat on. Right. Tim, I'm buying your business. Sue, I'm buying your business. Cliff, I'm buying your business. I knock on your door, and my first question I ask you is, what makes you special? If you say my product, if you say price, and if you say the segment we market into, if you say my service, if you say I've got a great solution, which is no different to a product, how many, let me get a sense. Brian, how many competitors do you think you have around South Africa that offer what you offer?
Around South Africa. I know in the local vicinity, the competitor, one is next door to us and the other one is a builder's warehouse about 30 meters away from us. So,
and now online shopping, which has become a very real and I think fairly permanent, in some cases, way of buying, it's going to increase, right?
Yeah.
We are lucky in one way in that it's very difficult to buy paint colors online.
For now.
For now.
For now. In the early part of this year, I did a webinar on digitization, and we work with an Austrian-based business that is solving that problem actively. They've applied some of their virtual reality and augmented reality technology already into burger text. You know, the carpet people.
Yeah.
Visit the carpet website. Have a look at what your future looks like on that website. It's happening and it's emerging. It's slow, but as with all technology, it's slow in the beginning and then suddenly it's there. You do not want to be caught in the back foot. So the first question I ask you is, what makes you special? Now, I happen to know that there are 5,400 bakeries in South Africa. 5,400 bakeries. If you turn around and say, my croissant is the best in the country, is that what makes you special? The next thing I ask you is, okay, I understand what makes you special, Daniel, but how do you make it happen? And when you turn around and you say, I lead my team and I'm involved with my customers and I bring relationships on board, I'm less interested. And when I say, well, let me know about your team, because what am I looking to do over here as a buyer? I'm saying, is the team committed to the business or are they committed to you? Is the team operating and functioning effectively, or are you leaving me with a headache of historic relationships that you have not had the guts and patience and tolerance to solve for? I'm looking to see what your historic growth is, because you're promising that if I buy the business today, Sandiso, there will be growth in the future. And then I'm looking to see how relevant you are to the business. If you can show me that you understand exactly who your client is, in terms of, we have got 3 segments we service. We understand the problems in the 3 segments. We understand the experience each of the segments needs in order to onboard as clients. In our system of delivery, we have articulated those activities to deliver that experience to the 3 segments. I have a team who operate the systems. They are responsible for generating my consistent organic growth. If you look at my dashboard, for the last 3 years, you will see consistent growth taking place, which is the evidence that these 3 elements exist. And finally, Pavlo, you can buy the business today, and 3 months later, when I'm out, the business will continue to function in the future as it has in the past because of these elements. So I take your EBITDA number, your profit before tax number, and I apply a generic multiple of 2. And to the extent that you can show me that you are differentiated, I add half. If you can show me a system of delivery, I add another half. 2 becomes 3. Show me your team, it becomes 3.5. Show me historic growth, it becomes 4. Show me that you are not needed, it becomes 5. It's the lazy person's way of valuing a business. If you're making R1 million profit before tax, I'm starting in and around R2 million for the business itself. And no amount of stock that you have on board is going to matter enormously to me, because when I buy the stock, I'll be paying you cents in the rands. What I look for when I buy a business is an asset independent of you that will in the future offer capital growth and income growth. And these are the elements that take 2 to 5. Now the 2 varies. In some industries, it's 1. In other industries, it starts at 3. But there are fairly well-known benchmarks out there. The way that you increase above the average price is by putting these in play. But let's go the other way around. What makes you special? No, Pavlo, my product. We've got the best quality paint out there. We've got the best quality paint out there. 2 becomes 1.5. Because I know that if you have the best quality paint out there, tomorrow Daniel, out of sheer necessity in competing with you, to survive will have to improve the quality of his paint. It's the way of the world. Product advantages are short-lived. If you've got the best priced paint out there, Fulesh competing with you, in order to survive, will have to innovate something to bring his price of paint to your equivalent price. It's short-lived. If we have the best service out there, Keith, in order to compete and survive, will lift his service game. And mostly, service in our world is largely there because we are there, which completely eliminates the independent argument. How does the whole thing work? No, the whole thing works. Customers come in and then we serve them across the counter, or they come in and we go and visit them and we talk to them about their problem and then we provide a solution to them. If you look at that, very seldom is this evidenced by any system. Your team, how do they function? Yeah, no, well, Jack's been part of the team for 35 years. Mary's been part of the team for 5 years. And when I go and independently speak to Jack and Mary, and I ask the right level of questions, I realize that A, they don't have a system against which they operate, and they take their leads from you day in and day out. And then when I look at your historic growth, and you can't show me any growth, you say, no, but Pavlo, I've been wanting to sell the business, and that's why I haven't really focused on it. But let me tell you, Daniel, the potential out there is amazing. Remember, the potential that I am going to manifest is amazing. I'm not paying you for that. I'm paying you for the historic growth momentum which I believe will project into the future without my effort. And then when I turn around and really look at a kuketso, and I really look at it, and I see that without you there, things fall apart. Has everyone read the novel? Without you there, things will fall apart. Without you there, in effect, I'm inheriting a world of trouble. The 2 that you had, look at that, it's gone to -3. The first 2 businesses I bought for $1. They were both over 30 years old. This is the process of valuation, folks. We take 10, 20, 30, 40 years to build a business. And we sell a business over 30 to 60 hours. When these arguments are presented to you for the very first time, because now your head's in the space, and you're 20, 30, 40 years in the game, it's a very frustrating place to be. And with that, I have robbed you of 11 minutes of your time, overtime. I hope you found it valuable. I'm happy to take a couple of questions. If there are questions, wave your hand wildly and then unmute yourself. I would implore you all, please, please, and some of you have already, please read both these books. Everything I've shared with you is amplified in the books. I promise you, it's not a money-making scheme, a book. Trust me on that. Yeah, as an author, you make nothing. You know, it's not a money-making scheme. But forewarned is forearmed. It's a highly, highly effective mode of motivation. Is that all of you stand to make up any lost revenues you've experienced this year, and in fact next year should experience one of the best growth years you should have in the history of your business. And the reason I say that is A, because we are working together, which means you're already growth mindseted and orientated. And beyond being growth mindseted, because we're working together, we're turning the mindset into action. And to the extent that you implement everything we share with you, it will evolve this outcome for you at the end. It's the reason we exist, it's the purpose we exist, and I'm hoping it's the reason and purpose of our relationship too. So with that, folks, I thank you very much for giving up time. It's been wonderful seeing some familiar faces. Pips, please can we make this available? Can I make it available to you in a PDF? It's easier to download because I use an online system, if that's okay. I'll make it available as a PDF and Pippa will distribute it to everybody. It was really nice to see some familiar faces. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed it.
Just ask.
Brian?
Brian has a question.
Yes.
Hi, Pavlo. Just a quick one. Is it normal, because we're quite new in the program, like 2 months into the program, is it normal for us to feel quite confused and like we want to get going, but we don't quite know how to get going? Almost as they're unpacking the different sessions with us, almost feel like I want to solve the problem more than identify the problem. Is it quite normal to feel like this? Because I feel quite anxious at times.
No, don't feel anxious. So if you look at how we work, just to reiterate, diagnostics first. To the extent that we can understand the business deeply, to the extent that we can understand the business in terms of the personalities, because every business needs to be built within the dynamic of the leadership team. To the extent that we run the business systems diagnostics to understand what's there and what's not there. To the extent that we can interpret the numbers and put them into ratios so we can benchmark. And to the extent that we can sit down and pause for a minute and say, given the changes afoot globally in the world, in the nature of customers and suppliers, in the nature of talent and team, where are we today And what does that future world look like so we can play into that future? That process of diagnostic is essential because it leads to probably one of the most valuable things we do with you, and that's goal setting. 10 goals. And to the extent that those goals have light shone on them because of the impact of the diagnostics, and those goals become meaningful, purposeful, but more importantly, measurable. If you can't manage, then it's a hope. If you can manage, then you can make it happen. Those 10 goals get broken up into 12 measurable outcomes. Month 1, month 2, all the way through to the end of 12 months. It gets loaded onto the dashboard. And every month, we focus on the goal. And every month with the integration facilitator, we're saying we are 3 months in, we are 6 months in, we are 9 months in. What is the percentage of goal achievement? Because we have to hit 100% goal achievement at the end of period 1. To the extent that we've understood the systems that are needed and required, it guides which systems we implement with you first. And that's why I said it's the sum of the parts. Business is not simple and it's not in a straight line. It's the many, many, many parts, no different to an engine that once built and once implemented, eventually begin to work together to create leads generated into the business that enable you to employ someone to manage marketing, that create leads being converted into the business in a great experience, especially in the retail sense, that will generate word of mouth, that will generate loyalty, that will stretch you into the digital space. So it's the sum of the parts. We are not the hare, we are the tortoise of building a business. And Brian, the reason for it is I haven't found the weekend warrior version of how to take a business from 62 odd million to over $1 billion in 14 years. I haven't found that answer yet. What I have found, and I'm steeped, my theory is steeped in company valuation. What I have found and what we have managed to achieve is a 24-month process to get a business built into an asset of value. And that then creates a platform for ongoing growth for so long as those systems are properly maintained and managed. And in the beginning, it is a bit confusing. And that's why we do this particular seminar. It's to just remind you, especially those of you who are in the earliest stages of our engagement, why are we doing what we're doing together?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Folks, if they know, oh,
Robin and I would like to know, we very much enjoyed, thank you so much for the session today, by the way. I'm just wondering why, you know, like when there's a psychologist or psychiatrist, everyone's too scared to say something, but when there's a dentist in the room, let's see your big smiles, everybody. That's not what I wanted to say, but let's just see. Okay, all right. So we really enjoyed Sweat Scale Sell on audio version, and we've purchased and have Reset, Rebuild, Reignite, but it's very hard to read it while you're driving down into Crunchhook. It's much easier to listen. And we're just wondering if you're planning on an audio version of it and how soon it will be coming out. And also, not that it's just audio, but we just love the way you speak and the way you told the story of Jack. So,
thank you very much, Clifford. I'm in the middle stages of securing a publisher in the US. And once that's done, part of the agreement and the plan is to put Reset, Rebuild, Reignite into an audible process. And there will be another 2 books coming out in the next 3.5 years. One of them is going to be on the money of business. How you start a business with no money, how you use other people's money to support the growth of your business, how you manage your money in the business. It's going to be very much driven from both an entrepreneur and shareholder's hat. How the process of valuation works in quite a bit more depth. because it's the ultimate destination that we're all moving to. So we need to understand the levers of valuation in very, very clear terms. And again, it will be written largely, by no limited thanks to all of you, because I always write about real people and people that we've worked with, to make it human and to remove all the business jargon out of it, which I don't think serves anybody anything. You look at business jargon, pivot, next level. Yeah, Keith, we're going to get you to the next level. Really? What the hell does that mean? What does that mean? You got to position your business. There's lots of jargon that we simply take for granted, which would be enormously valuable to us as builders of businesses to understand it technically, but through story, as opposed to a very dry academic paper, which is unlikely to ever come out of me in any event. So Clifford, the long answer, or the short answer is, I'm guessing in the next year and a half or so, they're going to force me to do Audible on it. It's not a short process. The book is slightly different to Sweat Scale Sell. In Reset, Rebuild, Reignite, it is quite definitive on how you innovate. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. And I just need to think about how you make that interesting from an Audible perspective, because Reset, Rebuild, Reignite is a highlighter book. It's almost a playbook before it is a general theory. It's how you innovate. If you think about what a crisis does, it changes the status quo of anything and everything. And the way that you remain ahead constantly in a world of change is through the reset phase that I write about in the book. And if your innovation is not customer-led and client-led, which is a point that I make in the book, then you can't adjust your systems to be relevant for the future you and the future business you're looking to create in order to stay ahead. Andy Grove, one of the founders of Intel, wrote a fantastic book which had a profound effect on me. And it was a book called Only the Paranoid Survive. And in the book he wrote, and this is something that very few of us would be familiar with as South Africans, he says, snow always melts slowly from the outside and then suddenly in the center. And me personally, I'm increasingly paranoid about being relevant. If I look at the levers of change that we are facing and moving into, which is climate, which is technology, and the third one being economic exclusion, not income inequality, which we are all familiar with in South Africa, but globally around the world, economic exclusion is what gave rise to Trump. It's what's given rise to Brexit. And it's what's given rise to a far stronger nationalist mindset. It would be profoundly harmful to us. It's what gave rise to the 36 trucks that were set alight in the last week on our roads. It's what gives rise to xenophobia, to racism, amongst other things. So those levers of change are all at play. And I think from next year, you can expect an extensive raft of new legislation around climate. COVID is here. COVID's occupying everyone's mind. By June next year, COVID will be gone to a large degree. If the vaccines work, and they seem to be, they seem to have high levels of efficacy based on what I'm reading. There are 3 vaccines out there. There will be a 4th and a 5th by the end of this year. So we'll all get access to the vaccines. We're all going to get our jabs. COVID will become what polio was in the 40s and 50s, or whenever it was around. I don't know. But the three big levers of change that are affecting our futures will be, in no particular order, will be climate, will be technology, and will be economic exclusion. To the extent that folks like us, who have to pay all our taxes, and who are not backed by this government on any level, all government policy supports the super corporates and some early stage startups. But the mid-tier SMEs out there are not properly supported. We don't have useful policies. We don't have accessible policies. We don't have any ministers looking at us as the economic engine of South Africa and saying, gosh, that's where we should focus everything. So in that environment, where the big cozy deals keep on being given between big politics and big corporates, it's people like us. Our clients in the States are people like us. Our clients in the States, out of the 41 clients, 2 were Republicans, 39 were Democrats. In 2016, all but 1 voted for Trump. And they voted for Trump because he said we're going to drain the swamp. And what they read into that is the cozy relationship between big corporates that govern and corner every sector and industry and the politicians who issued the big tenders to those companies. If that relationship is going to be broken in order to create more opportunity and level the playing field across the United States in business, we will vote for any creature that delivers that to make it fair again. And those signals are there. We saw it with Trump, we saw it with Brexit. It's going to be very interesting to watch what happens at the next World Economic Forum. For years and years and years, the WEF has been plagued with protests. And all the business people flying in their private jets, and all the politicians and all the corporate CEOs represented over there were not paying attention. And it's because people like us, Fulesh, Brian, Daria, Clifford, Tammy, we risk everything we have to build the businesses we have. We create employment. We pay our taxes for fear that if we don't, we'll be quashed. Whereas a massive corporate funded with shareholders' money, with a suite of C-suite executives, with boards, supported by the big 4 in accounting, the big 4 in law, pay hardly any tax around the world. Look at Amazon. It's pissing people off. And watch, it's going to unfold. It's becoming a big lever of change. So folks, change is here to stay. COVID will come and go. There are 3 massive levers and multiple small crises in between. And every crisis is an opportunity to usher in change, whether it be to your team, to your customers, to your clients, or to your suppliers. I'm going to love and leave you. I've taken over 28 minutes more than I should have. Pippa will do a distribution of this to everyone who was here. It was really, really lovely to see you all. And thank you so much for being part of Aurik. We really appreciate working with you. You give everything we do meaning and value. I promise you that.